What a headshot! What a head!
How's it, guys? This is Dayvy, FPL, and welcome back to the Fantasy Premier League video here on my channel. Now in this video, I'm going to bring you guys two kind of different wildcard drafts, at least different to what you've probably seen up until this point. And in today's video, I'm going to be taking you through three premium wildcard drafts. So yes, we're going to try and fit three premium assets into these drafts. I'm going to be covering two variations of this. The first one is going to be a forward premium such as a Ronaldo or maybe a Harry Kane. And the second draft, or the second version, is going to revolve around another premium midfielder such as a Kevin De Bruyne. You guys can also opt for maybe a Bruno Fernandes or Heung-min Son, but we did already cover Heung-min Son in the initial wildcard draft that I did release on Monday, so go check that video if you do want the South Korean. When making these drafts, I actually realized how easy it is to fit three premium assets into them, and that's just because of one reason and one reason only. There's so many kind of mid-range and budget entries in the defense, midfield and forward departments that are not only in form but also have great fixtures. So we'll be touching on some variations of these budget options throughout the two drafts. So that's something you guys are interested in? Sit back, relax, and let's get straight into it. So before going on to the two different drafts, I wanted to give you guys some talking points because I do think it's quite important to think before we do make a draft. And the first reason for these three premium assets and the first talking point I wanted to go over is, do you actually need three premium options in your drafts or your FPL team? I know if you guys have watched the channel since the start of this season, you would have known that we did do, I think it was on an ultimate guide video, we answered this question about the three premiums, and how I kind of decided on what to do and what premiums to go for was relying on the captaincy debate. Now if you guys do look at captaincy for the upcoming game weeks, it's probably going to be on the Egyptian winger Mo Salah, or it's going to be on the Belgium striker Romelu Lukaku, so that kind of eliminates the need for three premiums. But if you guys are kind of looking for some more differentials, maybe in the upcoming game weeks you want to skew your strategy a little bit, go for a more differential captain, then maybe a Kevin De Bruyne could be a little bit of a nice punt to go for on a wild card. And as I always say, on a wild card you guys want to take at least one or two punts to go, so I think Kevin De Bruyne is a perfectly fine option because of his low ownership. Now this talking point does change slightly with Cristiano Ronaldo. So CR7 doesn't have great fixtures, to be honest, but as I did mention in the introduction, you could always kind of have Ronaldo as a placeholder, and then when Spurs' fixtures do look slightly better, or if you want to bring Harry Kane in for Newcastle away in game week 8, you guys can do that, but I think most of us might keep CR7 for Leicester and then ship him out when those Man United fixtures get slightly worse. I guess if you guys are also a Man United fan, you might want to go for a CR7. As I always say, FPL should be used as a contributing factor to your enjoyment of football. So if you want to bring in a CR7 or Kevin De Bruyne, Harry Kane, then go for it. But at least you guys are still being a little bit sensible by having Lukaku and Salah, because those are the more premium essential options that I would be looking at. Then the second talking point about fitting three premium assets into your kind of wildcard drafts and your team selection is going to be that we have excluded one defender, and that's going to be Trent Alexander-Arnold. Now if you guys are going to want Trent, if Klopp does say he's back for Watford in game week 8 and you really do want to have him in your squad, I think it's going to be quite hard to have three premium assets, and I would almost classify Trent Alexander-Arnold as a premium within himself because he's the most expensive defender to own, so I guess he's premium in that regard. But fitting Trent and three premiums is going to be very tough to do, and that's why if you want to get three premium attackers, I would probably recommend downgrading him. And with the Chelsea and Man City defenders having such good fixtures, I don't think that's the worst decision in the world, to be honest. Now, I just want to give my disclaimer out here. I probably wouldn't recommend going for three premiums, but my thoughts on this have actually changed once making these drafts and seeing that the team, the starting 11, actually looks quite respectable, and you do have some bench coverage as well. So without further ado, let's get on to those two drafts. So the first one, as I mentioned, is going to focus around having another premium forward, kind of contributing to Lukaku as well in that front three. I decided to go with the Cristiano Ronaldo, but you guys can also go with the Harry Kane if you rather prefer him, because both these two options do come in around the same price. I just trust Ronaldo slightly more than I do Harry Kane at the current moment. But I'm going to start off with the bench as I usually do on these drafts, and I want to just show you guys that you still can have a respectable bench even with three premium assets in your starting 11. So starting off in goal, Ben Foster, nothing much to talk about there. My kind of favorite 4.0 goalkeeper to have because he might actually start even when Bachmann does come back from his injury. The next three options on the bench all feature for the respective teams. The first one, Ben White from Arsenal, comes in at 4.4 million and a nice little cheap entry into that Arsenal defense that has looked slightly nice. I've also combined him with his goalkeeper teammate Ramsdale for a little bit of a double up there because Arsenal's fixtures do look quite nice, and especially those home games look quite strong. Livramento comes in as our 5th defender, playing right now for Southampton at that fullback position. Doesn't offer the highest attacking threat in the world, but Southampton have actually looked quite solid defensively. So I mean, he's not a bad option at 4.2 million. And the final player on our bench is going to be Mbeumo. I do apologize if I am mispronouncing that name. I think this is how you do pronounce it. I kind of researched this before the video, but as always, as soon as I press the record button, I suddenly have forgotten how to pronounce it. But he's a nice little option at 5.5 from Brentford. Now, there has been some talk of some potential rotation in these upcoming game weeks, but I do think him and Tony have got quite a good chemistry between themselves at that centre forward position. And as I said, he is playing out of position as a midfielder, playing as a centre forward, and that's always going to be quite a nice option in FPL. So the bench is still quite respectable here, even though we have quite a lot of budget in our starting 11. So if you need the bench players to come on to your starting 11, they can quite easily slot in. And also if you want to get some rotation between the more budget options, you can do that with this draft. But now let's get on to the starting 11, because I do think this team looks quite respectable. As I already mentioned, Ramsdale in goal, kind of contributing to those Arsenal lovely fixtures. Got the double up here, but I don't think that's the worst decision in the world, because you probably won't be starting 2 Arsenal defenders most game weeks with this set 3 at the back, consisting of 2 Man City options, and then also 1 Chelsea option. So I have gone for 2 City and only 1 Chelsea option, just because I wanted to show you guys some variation here. And to be honest, I think the Chelsea rotation right now is worse than the Man City pep roulette. I don't know if you guys do agree with me, but it seems like Tuchel is rotating that defense and that starting 11 quite heavily, and that's why Diaz and Cancelo seem to be more assured starters than maybe an Azpilicueta or maybe a Chilwell or an Alonso. So Rudiger is my Chelsea defender of choice. That's kind of a no-brainer there. The most nailed centre-back in my opinion. Thiago Silva, Christensen. Thiago Silva is quite injury-prone. Christensen is almost prone to rotation. So that's why Rudiger slots in here as I think the number 1 centre-back in that Chelsea defence. Diaz, Cancelo are quite expensive, but I do think these 2 Man City defenders will be worth it in the long run, considering that the fixtures are improving slightly than they have been, and that Man City defence is always solid as usual. I think both of these 2 options also offer some attacking threat. I think that's probably the only downside to Rudiger. He does make up for it kind of being nailed, but I think that Diaz off those set pieces is always a threat. Then also Cancelo from that crossing ability on those set pieces as well offers that assisting threat. I don't think you guys can go wrong with a Chelsea / Man City, a triple up, double up, whatever you want to go for in your defense on a wildcard, because these teams have great fixtures and the defenses are rock solid. Now going on to our midfield department, and obviously with kind of the stacked forward department, we've had to make some budget cuts in the midfield department, and that's why we have some cheaper options. But as I spoke about with the bench, you can rotate your bench easily here, and if Mbeumo wants to come off the bench for a nice fixture for Brentford, as Brentford do have some nice games coming up from game week 10 onwards, you can easily do that with Townsend or Smith Rowe. My 2 more essential midfielders to go for are going to be Rafinha and then also Mo Salah, and that's kind of no questions asked there. Mo Salah, the most essential player to own at the current moment, probably the best player in the world on current form, so he's not going to go anywhere on my wildcard. And then Rafinha, with this lovely Leeds fixtures coming up, I do want some coverage of that Leeds attack. Then go on to our more budget options. We've got Smith Rowe and Townsend. Now Smith Rowe I think is worth his value at that price point. Seems to have locked down a spot in that Arsenal starting 11, and with Ramsdale, Ben White, Arsenal's fixtures look quite strong for at least the medium term. He does love to get in and around that box, I think at 5.3 million. He just has to get a return every now and again, and I think he'll be worth his price point. Now going on to Townsend and the Everton midfield, you guys can kind of slot in whatever Everton midfielder you guys want. Townsend, Doucouré, Demarai Gray, all 3 are looking really strong, and Rafa Benitez has Everton playing a really nice brand of football at the current moment. So I think that Townsend, any 3 of the midfielders from Everton are worth their price point, because they do come in quite cheap at 5.5. I don't really know which one to go for. I think I'll have to do a more in-depth stats analysis in the Ultimate Guide next week. So comment down below if you guys would want kind of a comparison between the Everton midfielders. But now going on to the main thing about this draft, it's going to be the front line. Going to get Hwang out the way, because at 5.5, just a nice little cheap budget enabler to go in the forward department. Now, as I mentioned with the bench and the midfielders, you guys can rotate Hwang whenever you want. If Mbeumo wants to come off the bench, you guys can bench Hwang. But I just think on current form, I will play him for game week 8, as a Wolves attack has looked actually quite strong in terms of the stats. Maybe not the finishing, but I think maybe Hwang can change that and finish off the chances as he did in game week 7. But Lukaku, CL7, Lukaku definitely the more kind of essential premium that I would go for in the forward department on a wildcard or a free transfer, whereas CL7 has a bit of differential ability right now. Dropped in price 2 days ago or 1 day ago, can't really remember, but his stock seems to be decreasing quite a bit, so you guys can always swap him around for Harry Kane, who has quite a favourable fixture in game week 8 against Newcastle. But I do think that Leicester at home fixture for United could actually be quite a strong one. Leicester at the current moment can't really defend at all, and I mean Vestergaard and Sionku haven't been the best kind of a centre-back pairing, so I do think Ronaldo and United could take advantage of this and score a couple. You might also consider CR7 as a little bit of a differential captaincy option after Mo Salah playing the early kickoff, and as you guys know, never captain the early kickoff. I actually might be doing it in Game Week 8 yet again. I kind of never learn, but if you are superstitious, maybe Ronaldo could be a captaincy option considering that Lukaku goes to Brentford, who have been quite solid at the back. But let me know what you think about this draft. Is it kind of too weighted towards the forward department? I guess we kind of have those premium midfielders and those forwards, but the defense actually looks quite strong as well. I think if I had to go for this draft, I might prefer going for a Harry Kane, but if you're going to be going for Harry Kane, I probably would prefer Heung-min Son, so you might want to switch to a 3-5-2 and then just stack your midfield instead. And now going on to our next draft, this is going to be the midfield premium option, or in this case, Kevin De Bruyne from Man City. So Kevin De Bruyne, massive differential, and as I mentioned in the introduction, if you guys want to take a punt, a super safe punt in my opinion, because it does seem like De Bruyne is back from that injury that he's had over the start of the season, and I mean with Man City's fixtures coming up, Kevin De Bruyne is bound to get some hauls. I decided to switch things up here a little bit. I went for 2 Chelsea defenders and also I went for Sanchez in goal. But before we get on to that, I want to talk to you guys through the bench because you might have seen 2 notable additions there. So yet again, we have Mbeumo from Brentford, but I've kind of paired him up with his teammate, his colleague, Tony, in that forward department as well. So obviously Tony is going to be a forward, whereas Mbeumo is going to be a midfielder. But together they are still playing as the 2 out-and-out strikers. And with Brentford's fixtures coming up from Game Week 10 onwards, I really do favour this double up. Now, because the Game Week 8 fixture is against Chelsea, and that's why I've decided to bench the 2 Brentford assets. You can see on my starting 11, 2 Chelsea defenders, on my bench, 2 Brentford attackers. So you guys can kind of see how this is probably going to play out. And there's going to be a Brentford goal, and there's probably going to be a Tony goal, and then an Mbeumo assist. The last player on my bench is going to be Livramento. We've spoken about him in the previous draft as well as Foster, so I'm not going to talk about them. I'm going to go straight onto the starting 11. So Sanchez in goal, I did mention, I spoke about Sanchez quite a lot. In my current draft, Sanchez is still going to be my 4.5 or 4.6 goalkeeper, just because I do think that Brighton defense has looked quite solid, and overall Brighton looking like quite a high-flying squad. I decided to switch it up here with going with 2 Chelsea defenders, and Azpilicueta and Rudiger are my 2 Chelsea defenders of choice if you guys want to go for the double up, just because Azpi can play at that right centre back or even as the right wing back, so offers a little bit of versatility there and is obviously the club captain, so quite a good option in terms of a non-rotation. I then opted for Cancelo over Diaz just because he offers such more of an attacking threat, and with those Man City clean sheets basically being guaranteed, I did opt for more attacking threat between Diaz and Cancelo. The final play in the starting 11 is going to be Duffy from Brighton. I've actually decided to double up on that Norwich fixture. I just think that Norwich are struggling quite a bit going forward, and Brighton's defense has looked quite strong, so you might as well just go for the double up. And considering the Brentford assets do play Chelsea, I'm perfectly fine with playing the 4.3, 4.4 Brighton defender. The midfield department looks slightly more respectable after the introduction of another premium midfielder with Kevin De Bruyne, Mo Salah, Smith Rowe, already spoken about them, including Rafinha. So just talking about De Bruyne, as I mentioned, has made a return to the starting 11. Now Pep has put a word of caution out. He has said that De Bruyne's minutes will probably be monitored after coming back from that injury. So that's maybe one to keep an eye on, and I might think that that might be too expensive to pay for an option that might not even start every fixture. But in terms of the Man City attackers, definitely the most nailed option you would expect. And if he's going to start those 3 next games, I think there will definitely be a hole in at least one of them. Also, maybe a differential captain if you guys want to go for it. I mean, not many people do own De Bruyne, so that almost makes him a mega differential captain. So if you guys want to play a little bit dangerously, if you're not really happy with your rank, want to get some differential moves in, I would probably recommend going for De Bruyne in your wildcard draft for Game Week 8. Now the final 2 attackers are going to be Lukaku and Hwang from Wolves. Now Lukaku is going to be a mainstay in most wildcard drafts just because those Chelsea fixtures look so superb, and I do think he's one of the best captaincy options for the next couple game weeks. Hwang already spoke about him, really nice 5.5 option, but I do have my suspicions about him just because obviously he did haul in Game Week 7, so don't you want to be chasing points at this stage of the season. But as with the last draft, let me know in the comments down below what you think of this draft. Do you prefer this one to the other one? Do you actually think you might go for 3 premiums in your own wildcard draft, or are you trying to do it with 3 transfers? I always like to see your guys' opinions, so drop them down in the comments below. But this is basically up to the video, guys. Hopefully you did enjoy it. Please don't forget to like it if you did, and subscribe if you have not subscribed yet. A ton of content coming up between now and that Game Week 8 deadline. So hopefully by that Game Week 8 deadline, we're going to be all kind of out of thoughts, and our Game Week 8 team selection is going to be quite easy to do with our wildcard active. I'm signing off. It's been Dayvy FPL, and I'm out. Cheers. Bye.